the nation. So, Mike, thanks for calling in. Interesting point. I want to go to my next guest, my friend. I'm so proud of her. She has got the #1 New York Times bestseller called Butler. Salena Zito, celebrated journalist and now #1 best-selling author. Salena, thanks for coming on here on the Scott Jennings Show. You must be on a whirlwind tour right now because this book is flying off the shelves right now.
Scott Jennings, first of all, I'm so excited about your radio show. I'm just so happy for you. You have such a unique ability to tell stories and connect with people. And seeing you in this position just makes my heart bigger.
Well, thank you for
thank
you for that, and thank you for making time for us here on the show. Because what we like to do here is give really good information. We like to go right to sources, and that's why I wanted you on, because it's my opinion you've probably spent more time with Donald Trump than any other journalist on the topic of Butler, maybe on any topic. You've talked to him numerous times this year. You were 4 feet away when the near assassination happened. So you've got a unique personal experience. You've talked to the president. Tell us about the book. And then I want to follow up after that because I want to hear what you have to say about the shooter. But tell us about the book, your experience, what it was like to write it, and your sort of journey with President Trump here.
So the book begins with that day. Actually, the book begins with the fact that President Trump was not the only president to be shot at and nearly killed in Butler. George Washington was as well. So we always know that history at least rhymes, right? And there would have been consequences then. There would be consequences today had the president lost his life. I was supposed to, as a journalist, things always change in schedules. I was supposed to interview him before, then after, then flying to Bedminster with him, and then he wanted to say hello. That series of decisions led me to being in the buffer because they were going to usher myself and my daughter out. I was 4 feet away. I saw the entire thing. The bullets literally went right over my head.
Wow.
And I knew and understood in that moment that I had purpose. God gave me a talent and I needed to work. And that's what I did. I knew, I remember as a kid reading all these Lincoln books about being a witness to history. And those history lessons teach us so much. So I knew I needed to do the work. The president did 2 things he never does that day. He brings a chart down. And it's never, if he ever has a chart, it's at the end. And if he does have a chart, it's on the other side. But he brings a chart down, and I turned to my daughter, who's the photojournalist that took the cover for the book, and said, "What does he think he is, Ross Perot?" Like I couldn't figure out why he had a chart.
Right.
And then he did something else he never does. If you've ever been to a President Trump rally or watched it in great detail, he never turns his head or neck away from the crowd.
Right.
He'll may turn his body, but not his neck. And he does that. That's when the 4 shots went off.
So,
I see him grab his ear.
Yep.
I see the blood streak across his face.
So you're 4 feet away.
And
when you say you're in the buffer, what that means in a presidential event, you have the stage, you have the podium, but there is a space between the president and the staging and where the crowd or the media can be. But you were in that space. So you're as close as you could possibly be to witnessing this. And so you hear the shots. Did you instinctively know that it was gunshots, or did it process that way for you right away?
I knew immediately. I'm a gun owner. So, I go to the target range. I knew exactly what I was hearing. It never occurred to me to get down. It never occurred to me that I was in danger. I don't know why, but that thought process has never entered my mind. I just knew I had a job to do. And so that's sort of how that went down. And we all have seen is what has happened that day and how, he gets up, which in the next day I find out he did was for a very big purpose that people don't quite understand. But he calls me the next morning, bright and early, and introduces himself like I've never heard of President Donald Trump, right? So, Salena, this is President Donald Trump. Oh my gosh, like I don't know that, right?
Right.
And he says, Are you okay? is your daughter okay? And gee, I'm really sorry we didn't get to fly to Bedminster and do that interview.
Wow.
And then I swore like a truck driver and said, I won't swear in the air. I said, are you freaking kidding me, Mr. President? I'm not worried about an interview right now. He would go on to call me seven times. Most of those conversations centered on purpose and faith, and ultimately the decision that it was the hand of God that was there. One of the most important moments happens is as he decides, he goes back and forth about, I don't know if I'm going to go to Milwaukee tonight or I'm going to go down, I don't know what I'm going to do, stay here. He ultimately decides to go to Milwaukee because that's where the RNC is going to be beginning the next day.
Right.
And I said, sir, why did you say fight, fight, fight? And he says, well, Salena, in that moment, I wasn't Donald Trump. I was a former president. I was possibly the next president. And there is an obligation to meet the moment, to project strength, because that's everything that the country stands for. And I knew that meant something. And if he's wheeled off or carried off or put on a stretcher, that may have completely different consequences as to how the crowd reacts and how the people at home react. He said, so I needed to show grit, represent the exceptionalism that we stand for, that you get knocked down, you get back up and you fight. And that's why I said that. And that's why I did that.
It's a traumatic experience. I mean, for anybody who would suffer through an experience like this, for the president, for you, for people that were there, for Corey Compatore's family, who I want to find out from you how they're doing. Obviously, he was killed that day. You've talked to the president, you said 7 times, and you've covered him since. You know him pretty well. You were there when it happened. You talked to him in the immediate aftermath. What's your impression of how he has personally processed this kind of a traumatic event in his own life?
He very much has recognized that this was a moment of faith. And I there are some private things that I have seen him do that I can't repeat, but I know that I see that in him. And he has taken on, if you look at how he has prosecuted his presidency from the get-go, that he understands he was saved for a purpose, and you never promised tomorrow. And because you never promised tomorrow, he has decided that every day matters. Everything has to count every day, and that's how he's done it. It's hard for him. You'll read in the book how much he struggles with Corey passing.
Yeah.
That someone that came to see him and with his family and going to have a fun day on a sunny day and eat cheesy French fries and be with people that are like-minded and share your same values, and you're murdered. And he really struggles with putting that in a place that he finds comfort.
What a lot of people don't know about you is that you're a Pennsylvanian. This is your base of operation. You know the state, you know the people, you know the politics there, probably better than any political journalist in the country. So the fact that this happened in your domain there, and that has then led to this book. It's called Butler. It's by Salena Zito. It is the number one on the New York Times bestseller list. Salena, I want you to hang on with me through the break, because when we come back, I want to ask you a question about the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks. I don't feel like we know that much. I mean, it's a year later and a lot of people still have questions, but I think you've investigated the situation with the shooter as much as anybody. Salena Zito is our special guest. I'm Scott Jennings. We're on the Salem Radio Network. It's the Scott Jennings Show. We're talking about the number one book in the country, Butler. When we come back, a question about the shooter in Butler.
Talk to Scott, 844-861-5537.
Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings here on the Scott Jennings Show on Salem Radio. Talking to Salena Zito, author of the number one New York Times bestseller, Butler. She was 4 feet away at that near assassination of President Donald Trump just a little over a year ago. Salena, again, congratulations on the book. Everybody should buy this book. I bought my copy and am really digging into that over this weekend. So I'll be looking forward to it. I want to ask you a question about Thomas Matthew Crooks. This is the shooter. Very mysterious. A lot of questions about how in the world this kid found himself laying on top of that trailer or shack on that July day. What did you find out, and what can you tell us about what's in the book about the shooter in Butler?
So Thomas Matthew Crooks, up until about November of last year, had been, while introverted, quiet, whatever word you want to use, right? A quiet kid. Pretty decent kid. Did very, very well in school. Was working his way through to pay for, he was finished community college and very bright, scored exceptionally high on his SATs, and was working his way through community college so that he could afford to go to university. It was around November of last year that he started to go from using the public email through the school, where there was no detection of anything unusual, to using encrypted email, and started visiting the dark websites as opposed to ones you can trace what people are looking at, watching at, interacting with. His father noted that he started to see peculiar behavior with him, dancing around wildly, things that he had not done before. And that's the most I could get. It was hard. The family has lawyered up.
Yeah.
The neighbors never see them. If you go past the house, you just see cameras. They must go out late at night, because I don't know when they go out. Nobody answers the door. So there was very little to find out. And I think the most important thing we can learn from it, which is something we should learn so much from every time there's a tragedy, whether it's a gun, where it's people are killed, a school killing, whatever, we need to address mental illness so much better than we do.
Yeah. In your
opinion,
opinion,
is a kid that completely collapsed.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously something wrong there. In your opinion, politics, any political influence, any foreign influence, anything like that in anything you investigated for the book?
He was all over the place with politics, and even that was very scant.
Yeah. Right.
It wasn't like a deep-seated relationship with either party. In terms of foreign influence, I have no idea, because that investigation has not been accessible.
That's Salena Zito, author of the new book, Butler, about the near assassination of Donald Trump last year. One more question for you before we wrap up the show. Obviously, there was a law enforcement failure here. There was a failure that this person was able to get in the position they were in and nearly kill Donald Trump. What did you learn about that? And in your mind, have steps been taken to tighten up security at presidential events, not just for sitting presidents, but for candidates when we have a campaign in 28? What's your view of that?
Well, that's our challenge, right? The challenge is with the rules with the Secret Service. The rules are a former president gets less presence in security detail than a current president and or a presidential candidate. Even President Obama did not have full service until he became the DNC, until he got the nomination.
Right.
It's an archaic rule. And I think it's something they're working to change, but also the inability to interact with local law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows the crooks and and the nannies and the trees and the neighborhoods better than local law enforcement. They should have been part of that communication.
That is Salena Zito. She is the author of the new book, Butler, #1 on the New York Times list. We got about a 30 seconds. So yes or no, is it true? Has this already been optioned for the movies? Are we going to see a movie off this book?
30.
We are going to see a movie, about 10-day productions, and it's already in pre-production.
Unbelievable. Congratulations to you, Salena. I don't know of a journalist who works harder in American political journalism than Salena Zito. Congratulations on the book's success. Thanks for coming on the Scott Jennings Show. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks also to Congressman Rudy Yakum for coming on to talk about his resolution. Join us again tomorrow on Salem. Scott Jennings, Common Sense for the American people.